my kind of route to this table sort of starts not really as being a city council member. With my city council member hat on, folks always ask us about kind of the schools in the neighborhood and education in the neighborhood, and we, I think probably all are generally in the practice of rerouting people to the school board because, you know, obviously the city council doesn't run the schools here. We have a separate, you know, municipal entity, which is the school district, who does run the schools, and a separate elected body, etc. Taking off that hat and putting on my hat, I have a daughter who turned 4 years old yesterday. And so we're in the process right now, the incredibly stressful process of finding a pre-kindergarten for my daughter.
Go Jackson School.
Well, and this is actually the route, and you know, I have had some repenting to do because as we were trying to decide where my daughter would go to pre-kindergarten, our first kind of thought between my wife and I was probably not Jackson School because of some of the perceptions that we had of a neighborhood school, not even walking in the building. Ever since we've gotten a chance to know the principal and meet some of the teachers and, you know, see some of what the school is up to on paper and kind of within the building, and chances are our daughter will probably be here this time next year. Because there's some really phenomenal stuff going on in the school. What I took aside from that was this sort of premise that, you know, I think the problem that I had with Jackson School wasn't inside the building at all. The problem that I had with Jackson School was the vacant houses that I see around Jackson School when I drive by or walk by the neighborhood. And so I started a conversation with some of the school leaders in the school district that sort of went along those lines. And I see you have that article, and I think I'm quoted in that paper as saying that that's an article that the Star Trib did about this project that I'm telling you about now. And I'm quoted in there as, you know, telling the school district that, you know, you could have NASA astronauts teaching every science class here, but, you know, if we don't do something as a city about the vacant houses across the street, folks probably aren't going to want to, you know, bring their children here. Now, on the converse, as we at the city talk about building, you know, sustainable neighborhoods and the type of neighborhoods that people are going to want to bring their families and their children to, and, you know, feel like, you know, it's that kind of neighborhood where you want to be in the streets and in the community, you know, if there's even any perception, I think, you know, research study after research study bears this out, if there's even any perception of a negative perception of a school in a neighborhood, that's probably the biggest barrier you can possibly have to families wanting to be in that, to locate in that neighborhood. And so, to date, what I think we have is a set of sort of challenged students in this community, a set of challenged families, and a challenged neighborhoods, and really a set of solutions which act like those problems are coincidental to each other, right? It just so happens that they're students, but, you know, it's the real life scenario is that those students come from those families who live in those neighborhoods, right? So we have to, I think, start doing a better job between the school district, who is really sort of responsible primarily for what happens in the building and on the grounds here. The city, who is really responsible for what happens in the neighborhood and sort of in the streets. And then as well as the county, whose role is to invest in supporting families. And so that's ultimately what we're building at the core, is a partnership between the city, the county, and the school district, with sort of this kind of huge set of community members and neighbors and organizations like Frogtown and District 8, and kind of the Project Spirit and all these kind of different, you know, kind of community-based organizations who work to serve children, families, and neighborhoods as well. So that's the sort of kind of real kind of quick run through of what it is that we're building. I've got some. I think I've got a couple of the kind of presentations. Actually, yeah, I've got a couple of the presentations that we've been running through. Not enough for everybody, but I give a couple to the principal here, and maybe he can help us later on get them to folks. You may or may not have heard of an organization out in New York called the Harlem Children's Zone. The Harlem Children's Zone is an organization out in New York run by a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Canada that's created, basically just took a map of Harlem and crafted out a 97 square block area and said, you know what, we're going to create sort of a promise zone here. You know, we're gonna tell students here, you know, we're going to create some charter schools, and we're going to, you know, create like community space, and, you know, really do some deep outreach to parents and deep outreach to community members, and really focus on making sure that these young people here get to college, right? That's all they care about. These young people are going to college, right? They've got a philosophy that that the founder always tells folks it's the adults. Like if he was here right now and there was one thing he could tell us, it's like about the achievement gap and why students fail, he would say it's the adults, right? We just have to figure it out. And so they've got this kind of whatever it takes philosophy that says, you know what, if it takes getting dentists, if it takes getting social workers, if it takes getting some foreclosure prevention counselors, if it takes finding these parents when they're pregnant even, and starting to kind of train the parents on how to be an effective kind of champion for the child's education, we'll do that. We'll just do whatever it takes to get these kids to college. And they've had some phenomenal gains. I mean, they in Harlem again have among their students completely eliminated the achievement gap. Their students are they're third graders. That's when they take the kind of, you guys know this better than I do, that's when they take the kind of proficiency tests. Their third graders are 100% above, at and above grade level in math. Their pre-kindergartners who go into kindergarten for the past 7 years in a row have been 100%, above proficiency levels. They've had their after-school programs, which they engage high school students in and things like that, who 80% or something like that, those go on to college. They've sent 500 students to college so far. And I sort of have the perspective that if you can do that in Harlem, then we dang sure can do that in St. Paul. We can sure beat the gap here in St. Paul. And so that's the sort of perspective that we're doing. We're based sort of on what they're doing there, but we're not trying to replicate. I'm always real careful to tell folks we're not trying to replicate. What the Harlem Children's Zone has done is basically said, here's what you can do if you can, raise millions and millions of dollars and open, 3 or 4 charter schools and, hire a 24-hour dentist and all these things that are really fun to read about at night before bedtime. But not really too instructive here, because we don't have those hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't have the ability nor the desire to open up 4 charter schools and stuff like that. But we're really trying to create a new model, basically, about what can we do in a public school environment. What can we do in a neighborhood that's got neighborhood challenges, right? And the way that this really should be led, to me, isn't by like nonprofit leaders who say, darn it, if the schools aren't going to educate our kids and the city ain't going to fix the neighborhood, we just have to. It should be done, with public energy and public resources. I don't know what could be more important for us to do than to secure the future of our families, of our neighborhood, and our children in this, in our communities here. So I think that's a basic run through of what it is we intend to do. Tate and District 7 is going to be really actively focused in this area on door knocking, so those neighbors around the table. We're going to be asking District 7 to be kind of at your door and talking to folks and really sort of spreading the word about this initiative, one, but also trying to engage people in sort of a needs assessment conversation so that as we map those kind of public resources and public assistance and public support that's available to folks, we can do a better job making sure that Mrs. Smith or Mr. Johnson in the neighborhood who needs these things are actively connected to those resources that exist, so that we're able to really support stable families. So that's what I'm glad Tate is right here at the table, because he's going to end up being, I think, for the neighbors quite a bit. He's going to end up being really sort of the face of what we're doing. Jeremiah, I see stepped out to do something here. But Jeremiah as well is working with the school district as the kind of schools outreach person. And one of the things that we've asked him to really focus on the 3 things we've asked the school district to focus on are academic achievement, right, in the building, obviously. Teachers, right, making sure that we have opportunities for teachers, professional development opportunity, whatever it is. The Science Museum of Minnesota has actually offered to scholarship teachers through their kind of teacher professional development programs. Which is focused on the STEM area, science, technology, what is it? Somebody knows here. Something in math. Engineering, there you go, and math. I knew somebody here would know even more than I did. So those types of opportunities. And then the final thing is really, and this is what kind of is going to be the core of Jeremiah's role, is really, really focusing on engaging community members and parents as like stakeholders in the school's success and in the student's success. So those are the folks, hopefully, that we'll be seeing kind of most often. But I sort of intend to, as a city council member, as a neighbor, and as a parent, be active and engaged in this building for the years to come as well. Any questions about, I know I just sort of spit out a lot at you, but any questions about kind of what this is looking like, how we're moving forward? Anything? Okay. This week, hopefully, you'll see in the papers that we're hosting, if there's bags under my eyes today, it's because we've been really focused on hosting a